Alright.
Are we streaming?
We're streaming.
This is a first.
First live stream of the podcast.
All right, on your marks, get set, go.
Hello and welcome back to episode 12 of the Tackl'N podcast. As always, I'm your host Brian. Alongside me is
Scott.
And tonight we're going to be talking some various topics. Tackle storage, some fishing trips, tactics we took and such like that, and
New kayak search.
New kayak search.
Some new devices we've seen on the market.
I like the sounds of that. Yeah, so unfortunately, we were supposed to have Jay Randall on this podcast, but we'll get into that a little later. Jay's been a little under the weather, so Jay, if you're out there, we love you. Hope you're doing good. But yeah, man. So
we're going to start with a new segment.
Oh,
tonight.
That's right.
Do you have the bag?
The bag.
For the live stream?
Coffee talk.
I like it.
So we figured all these fishermen and hunters, like ourselves, you always start out your day with a fresh cup of brew. So we figured we'd try a different brand of coffee every podcast, give you our feedback. Tonight we're drinking Caribou Blend. Oh, well, it's by Caribou Coffee, Caribou Blend Medium Roast, Whole Bean. Check our Instagram story feed. We got a little video series of us grinding up some beans.
Some new appliances.
New appliances.
Yep.
That's right. We're at the new Tackl'N headquarters up here in Delavan, Wisconsin.
Worldwide headquarters.
We're going worldwide
That's
now.
Right.
Huh?
That's right. That's right. So what do you think of the coffee?
Man, super smooth. It's kind of got like an earthy undertone for sure, but it's not like too dark.
No, it's got a real smooth flavor. Man.
I
like
dig it, man.
It's not acidic.
Usually I'm drinking like Starbucks and stuff.
Oh, I know.
And like I was telling you earlier, I made some for my wife earlier, and she thought it tasted like motor oil. But no, this is really good, really good. I was telling you, I don't think I've ever had Caribou coffee before, and this is a first for me. So.
Well, I used to have one right by the house, and I loved it, man.
Yeah.
I really did, and then it went away. And we were walking in the brand new Fleet Farm.
Fleet Farm. Oof.
And the place was mobbed.
Toys R Us for adults.
I think there was a couple times we said we're in Disneyland right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that place will definitely put Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops out of business, I tell you what. I mean, at least their shelves were stocked with stuff, unlike our Cabela's here locally. But, yeah, this is some good brew, man. Smooth and classic.
And since we're live streaming this, you know what I think makes it taste even better?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
The Tackl'N official coffee mug.
Absolutely.
Right?
These will be for sale in our store.
They will.
We were talking about that at lunch today. You got the Tackl'N logo on one side, and the opposite side has got the different logo. But, yeah. So we'll touch on that towards the end of the episode about the store.
I think this is definitely a repeat purchase, this coffee.
Oh, yeah, dude, for sure. I think I could definitely get away from the Starbucks and stock up on this stuff for sure. Because I think the price wasn't bad. What was this bag, like $7?
I think it was less than that even.
Yeah, for the price, I mean, it was awesome.
Really
Yeah.
So, highly recommended, Caribou Medium.
Yeah,
Good
definitely.
stuff.
Check it out, for sure.
So tonight, Brian, on the show, we want to talk a lot about, I know I struggle with this.
Sure.
And I'm assuming our users or listeners struggle with this as well. And that's tackle management on the kayak.
I can definitely relate. I've made some adjustments, out of my Bonafide for sure. And I'm still struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I guess the whole thought here would be, I'm used to, let me tell you how not to do it. So I take my gargantuan tackle box that weighs 180 pounds, and I literally I want everything, so I throw it into my kayak.
Sure.
And off we go, and of course, as we're switching lures and doing all that good stuff, can't find things. So I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know what, would it be better? I've got that little what do you call it, that table tray thing in the front of my
Yeah,
kayak.
yeah. For
that
the
holds
new
3700s, I think.
Yeah, 7300.
7300s.
Yep.
And I started thinking, like, because on my Canada trip, one thing I did was I got tired of searching for stuff, or like my tails for my chatterbaits are in this, and my chatterbaits are in this box, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I thought maybe what I should do is take a big single storage bin and put a little bit of everything in it.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Favorite colors, that whatever. But I've got spinners, you got buzz baits, you got chatters, you got some plastics in there. And then, maybe divide it amongst two of them or something like that. But I was just kind of brainstorming, thinking there's got to be a better way than just bringing a gargantuan tackle box and trying to figure out what you're going to do. What are your thoughts?
Well, we just fished, what was it, last week, right? Was your birthday?
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Scott. Everybody say happy birthday.
I'm trying to forget them now, but that's all right.
But, yeah, we went out fishing, and I remember you made a statement to me that you kind of went minimal with all your gear and how much easier it was.
And so much more enjoyable.
See, and I totally get that fact. Like, we'll get into this segment a little bit later, but I just recently, last weekend, took a trip with Jay Randall, and we were fishing new water, well, somewhat new water, but when you're doing that and you don't know what the fish are biting on, you want everything.
You want everything, right? Yeah.
But what I seem to do is, because I'm running my Bonafide SS127 with a Yak Attack black pack in the back, and then Bonafide's got that center console, kind of down between your foot pegs. So and you got your junk tray underneath your seat. But what I have done is I've taken my junk tray out of the boat.
Right.
And I got a big Plano box that I stuff with all my bags of plastics and stuff. But what I've been doing is actually pulling out baits, like for say a spinner bait, buzz bait, whopper plopper, some jigs, whatever. And I'll stuff that in that plastics bin under my seat, or put it in that center console dry box.
Sure.
That way I got a little bit of everything, and I'm not having to turn around and reach behind me and pull stuff out. So, it definitely saves a little bit of time, a little bit of aggravation for sure. I would love the bait tray or the junk tray that Bonafide put in there.
Right.
But the problem is during transport, right? If you leave a bunch of stuff in there, then it's going to go flying out when you're going down the road, depending on how you're transporting your kayak.
Sure.
If that was an actual slide out, like, plastic Plano box, attention Bonafide, that would be a stellar idea.
Sure.
So what I actually recently did, because I was fishing the home lake, was I took a bunch of plastics and a bunch of just terminal tackle and various lures and threw them in a smaller plastic 7300 box that I had in my garage.
Sure.
And threw that under there. Still have the black pack in the back of the boat, but I'm not having to turn around and reach for anything unless I get broke off, whatever.
Sure.
But we just, like we mentioned, we were just at Fleet Farm up here in Wisconsin, and they had, it was the Plano...
It's the V-Crate.
Plano V-Crate, and that seems like it's specifically designed for kayaks.
It is. I'm looking at it right now, and...
What's the retail on that? Like $120 or something it was, I think?
Yeah, it was like $129, I think is what it was. It was $130. But for those on listening to the show and maybe can't see us, whatever, it looks like a V, right? If you're looking down on it.
Yeah.
But it's a probably, what would you say, 18 inches tall, maybe?
Maybe closer to 16. 16 to 18.
And it's got it unclips, it opens up. It's got two on the two sides of the V. You can put those
two 7300
7300s right in there. And then of course it's got like this rubber. What do you call it? It's almost like a secure strap.
Yeah,
that you can pop out and then grab whatever you want. But
and then it also had rail system on each side.
So if you want to put a fish finder or a rotogrip or whatever.
Right. Yeah. You could, put a GoPro mount on it, a rod holder. Yeah, anything that goes in your normal track on your kayak.
What I didn't get was the bottom had like these 4 tabs with holes in them. I'm assuming that's to tie them into your rails on your kayak.
That could be. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Or would you strap it, you think? Do you have rails in the back of your Bonafide?
Yeah, I got rails all over the place.
Okay.
I mean, the thing about that was, from the design aspect of it, is it was shaped in a V, so it could go in the front
Right.
of your boat. It can go in the back.
Sure.
I mean, me personally, I don't think I would buy one of those just because I have the black pack. And, you know, the layout in the back of the Bonafide is pretty much made for that.
Sure.
But I think like in your new canoe, because you got that back V in the back of the Frontier, that would fit in there perfect. But then, like we said, you're turning around, swiveling around. But you could put that up in front in place of
Where that tray system
goes.
Right.
You know.
I don't know. You know, it's what I struggle with, and it's always the case. I don't care if I'm in a kayak. I don't care if I'm in a fishing boat.
Sure.
Brother-in-law's nitro. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm always without what I want. So I always want to bring my entire tackle box. And I
No
think
doubt.
There's got to be a better way.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, and not only that, but you know, less weight in your kayak, the
Right.
easier paddling
Sure,
gonna be for sure.
Yep.
You know, but no, I get that. I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, pre-fishing tournaments with my old man, and that freaking guy. I tell you what, man, he had 3 of every color of everything. You know what I mean? So trying to find something, which I know the old man listens to this, and he's probably laughing hysterically right now, and he's like, "Yeah, 3 wasn't enough." But you know, it was frustrating at times. You know,
Sure.
I remember trying to find something. I'm like, "Look, man, where is this?" It's in that Walmart bag in the back seat under the,
Right.
you know, like seriously,
Sure.
dude, like how is anybody going to find anything in your boat? But you know, kayak a little different because you're individual fishing, and you know, it's
Sure.
totally going to be dependent. I mean, I know when we did the iCast episode, I had seen something, and I forget the name of it, but it was you know, I use some tools where they use it's called a sustainer system, where all these, like the 7300 boxes would lock together.
Yeah.
And they were coming out with that this year, and I got to look it up and figure
Okay.
out who that was.
Yeah.
But with that option, you could have like all your common stuff, that your go-to stuff,
Sure.
in one box. All the rest of your stuff in the other ones.
Right.
Have the go-to up by your seat. Leave the other ones in the back, and then if you run out, you get to turn around and whatever.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's funny, and I'm sure every single angler is going to be different from a kayak perspective on how they store their stuff, how they organize their stuff. You know, now that I think about it, you know, fishing with Jay this past weekend and loading and unloading his gear out of my truck, you know, he had like a couple of these little bags, and like this one was plastic worms, this one was like plastic creature baits, this one was spinner baits.
Right.
He had some Plano boxes.
Yep.
And then he's got what is it, the JA crate that Jackson makes. You know, Mr. Jackson over
Sure.
there. He's got his fancy cooler
Fancy
thing.
things, yep.
Yeah, fancy pants, Jay. But yeah, so he puts that in the back of his Kusa. You know, so it's the same thing. You're still turning around. You know.
Well, the one thing I like that you do, and it's going to be kayak specific, is you got that really big, it's got to be 3.5, 4 inches deep. That big one you slide under your seat,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's got
plastic.
all your bags of plastics. So, my new canoe, I can fit, I think, a very thin one underneath my seat.
Sure.
And then I've got the 2 up front. So I think what I really have to do is come back and go, okay, I want to try to break, I guess, all my depths of fishing and all my approaches.
Yeah, that makes
maybe
sense.
into 3.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But I really like that idea that you did, because it makes it really easy. You know, if you need something plastic, it's right there.
Well, it's funny you say that, you know, because I guess it would depend too on like the season you're fishing.
Well, sure, and what you're going for.
You know,
Yeah.
like right now, like I said, I took that bigger plastic container out.
Yeah.
And I have a smaller one now. And basically it's got all my Z-Man plastics and then a few assorted plastic things that I threw in there. But then I also threw some of those baits in there. You know, so it's like come springtime, that whole box is going to be completely
Sure.
different than what it is for fall.
Sure.
You know, so you can kind of rotate out. You know, it's just, you know, my biggest struggle is, I think, when it comes to managing tackle is, if I'm not catching fish on a certain bait and I'm retying, I take that bait, I take off, and I throw it in that storage container right between my legs, and then give it a month, and that thing is a mess.
Right.
And I got to completely go through it, and that's just me being lazy and not,
Sure.
you know, going through, cleaning it out, organizing it after every trip. You know, when you paddle 3, 4, 5, 6 miles,
Sure.
you know, in a day,
Yep.
you know, you're, you know, plus 1 million casts, you're tired, you don't want to mess with that. You know, or lately, you know, we've been taking trips, so it's like, I don't want to mess with that. I
No,
want to
right.
get on the road and get home, you know? So,
Plus, while you're on the water, you want to get your lure in the water.
yeah, for sure.
You don't want to
for
spend
sure.
a whole lot of time trying to.
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
Well, especially, you know, I think from like a tournament aspect.
Sure.
Like, you know, I know I've mentioned next season, you know, I'm planning on fishing a few tournaments, which ones I haven't decided yet. But, you know, pre-fishing, I'm going to figure out what baits are working for me and what's not.
Right.
And when it comes to what's working for me, that's what's going to be in that smaller tackle
Sure.
box right
Sure.
under my seat, ready to go.
Sure.
You know, so
Oh, I think where it gets even more complex, though, is if we're talking individual lures, that's one thing.
sure.
If we're talking like tie and drop shots, and now you got all the components,
Sure,
or, you know,
sure.
or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or even Ned rig, like all of a sudden you got your jig heads, then you got your plastic back ends, and you know what I mean? Like
So what
weights for the crawdads.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how you have your stuff organized, but I know in my black pack I have a 7300 box that I have
It's all terminal tackle?
marked terminal, and it's all terminal tackle. Offset hooks,
Jig heads.
wide gap hooks, jig heads, football jigs,
Yep.
weights, you know.
Mm-hmm.
All my terminal stuff is
That
in
one
one
bin.
box.
And it's labeled.
And yeah, and it's pretty full of stuff. I could actually probably get away with
Sure,
doing two.
sure.
But I stuff it all into one, so that way I got that stuff
One
all
place
in
to
one
go,
place.
yep.
You know, so you know if I'm throwing plastics, you know I have everything I need right there. Same thing with my Ned rig heads are in there. You know, I do keep some in my Z-Man plastic box. So I mean that seems to help me out quite a bit. Is just having all my terminal stuff banned in one
Right.
box instead of. You know, I know some people are, you know, have their stuff scattered. Like they'll
Sure.
put their offset hooks with this certain plastic that they're going to use them with.
Right.
They'll put their Ned rig hooks with their TRD
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
I don't know. To me, it doesn't make sense
Yeah.
that way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Keep like things together.
Well,
so to speak.
I did the same thing in my tackle box is massive. It's one of those big Cabela's ones.
Yeah.
Holds 7 or 8 of the
Right.
7300s, you know.
Sure.
And like I'll have all my cranks in one, right? But the problem is like top water.
Yeah.
You know? So all of a sudden I've got whopper ploppers, I've
Sure.
got you know, frogs, I've got top water Rapalas,
Right.
I've got poppers, and all of a sudden you've got this mess.
Yeah.
You know, where it's almost like I almost like should think ahead and be like, okay, if I do top water today, I'm going to bring a buzz bait, 1 or 2 buzz baits, and I'm going to bring maybe a couple frogs.
You had me at buzzbait.
I know it's your favorite.
That's my favorite bait.
But you know what I mean, though, like
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
and then just bring 4 lures instead of
Sure. Well,
You know?
I think we talked about in the absolute first podcast we did. I know when we got into kayak fishing, the first thing I did was downsize my tackle box.
you totally did.
And I bought some, I forget what brand, I think it was like a Boo Garcia.
But is
or
that what you
something
did
like
though? Like you actually
I downsized my box and then I bought extra boxes
Yeah.
and filled those up so I could interchange them all.
interchange it.
You know, like, okay, I'm going on.
This is my master box
Yeah.
of top water, and then I'm going to pick whatever I want.
Right, yeah,
Put it
or,
into my
you
smaller
know,
box.
I'm going to this lake, so I need this box, that box, and this box. Throw that in
Gotcha.
the bag.
Gotcha.
So that way it was less tackle, less weight, you know,
Sure.
things like that. But then, you know how that always goes. You get to that body of water, and you start fishing, and you're like, Wish I had that bait.
Don't have my crank box.
Yeah.
All right.
You know where that's at. Yep, that's sitting on the bench in the garage.
Totally.
Yep. This was smart downsizing, but
We went to the river that one day. We talked about it. I didn't think I was going to use crankbaits.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I caught fish on.
and I forgot my plastics box, and I had to borrow plastic
Some
crayfish
rods,
from you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing though. Like as fishermen, like you don't want to be caught with your pants down, right? You want to be caught with, you want to have everything at your disposal.
Oh yeah.
But the problem
absolutely.
is, I'm the opposite, where it's just like I don't have time to go through this. I'm gonna throw it all in there.
And that's the thing. Like in a kayak, you're so limited. Whereas if we were in a Ranger 621V, Mr. Fancy Pants,
Right.
Scott Purrs,
Right.
we'd have every lure under the sun.
No, sure.
Just like my old man when he
Oh,
had
yeah.
his 20-foot skeeter.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
had all these, all the storage compartments filled with baits.
Well, it's like when I go out with my brother-in-law on his nitro. I don't mind bringing my tackle box because guess
Sure.
what? I
Yeah.
can stand up, I can
Yeah.
sit down, I
Yeah.
can take
Yeah.
my time sorting through it. Like when you're in the kayak, you're also limited mobility-wise.
Sure.
To an extent.
Yeah, I mean, you can stand up and fish, but you're not going to stand up and hold your tackle box and dig through lures, meanwhile dropping
Right,
them
like
in the
putting
lake.
a box over here and a box over here, digging through this. And
Right.
You can't do that in a kayak.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, you guys listening at home or, on your drive to work, whatever, we'd be interested to hear from you guys, some tactics that you guys use.
for sure. I think that's a good term because, to be honest, it requires some forethought and some approach, right?
Sure.
As far as
Well, I mean, I think that's anything that has to do with kayak fishing, and I think that's why we all enjoy it so much.
Right.
It's a very tactical-oriented thing,
It is.
It's not like you can just jump in the boat and go.
No, right.
Right. You got to plan out your tackle management, how you're going to store your rods, why you're in transit, why you're on the water.
Right. They're different.
Yeah,
Totally
and it's different for everybody.
It is.
You
Right.
know.
Yeah. No,
So
for sure.
it's interesting, we've both fished with a few different kayak anglers, and it's interesting to see everybody's setup, from a different point of view. And I think we've touched on that before, where you kind of pick little tips and tricks up from everybody to kind of perfect your own tactics, so to speak, to manage that stuff. So
Well, and since we're on that, you were mentioning, storing your tackle or storing your rods, like while you're in transit versus not, etc. Tell us about your Newton trip, because that involved a lot of that, right? I mean, as far as your camper,
yeah. So
I think it's the first time you actually did. Is it no? The second time now you've done them on top, right?
Yeah. But this time, so the first trip I took with my cousin Eric. Shout out to Eric. I know he's watching right now. The first trip when I took with Eric, he fished out of my Pelican, and I fished out of the Bonafide, and I actually took the seat off my Bonafide. The only thing I kept in my boat was my rods, because on the Bonafide you could store the rods in the hull of the boat, but I flipped it upside down. This time around, I went down south with Jay Randall.
You went to Newton.
Yeah, we went to Lake Newton, which is by Shelbyville, Charleston, Illinois area, and Jay was fishing out of his Jackson Liska. I had my Bonafide, and I actually left my Bonafide sitting up. Jay's like, "Why are you going to flip that over?" Because the Bonafide's got that tri-hull design,
Right.
so it sits flat.
Sure.
So I'm like, "Yeah, why not? Let's try it." We start driving down the road, and I'm like, I think I told you today, I'm like, first mile and a half, kayak hasn't blown off the roof of the truck, and ain't going to blow off the rest of the way, So it made it totally fine. But, I take my black pack off, I take my plastics box off, I take my little dry box storage that comes with the kayak off, and I throw that in the back of my truck.
Sure.
The rods always stay inside my boat, whereas Jay, he put his rods across the bed in the back of the trailer, and then he had his J crates in the back of the truck and things like that.
Sure.
But when we were going to and from the campground to the lake, I leave my black pack in because we put the kayaks just in the bed of the truck. I leave all my stuff virtually in place.
Yep.
Except for my seat. I had to take my seat off because Jay's got the bigger Liska. So it was kind of, you know, here's my boat. His was kind of laying over the side a little bit of the Bonafide. So, you know, I just took my seat off, threw it in the corner. Jay always keeps his seat on because I forget how the Jackson one works. I think it's got pins that go through part of the plastic of the boat and then through the leg of the of
so
the
it locks
seat.
it in.
Yeah, it kind of locks it in.
Sure.
So he leaves his seat in, but he reclines it all the way back. But, you know me, I always leave my Bonafide seat up in the highest position.
Sure.
So, you know, I could have dropped it down, but what's the point?
No, right.
You know, I got to pull it out of the holders, the seat holders anyway, so I might as well just throw it in the corner. But I think he left his crate in the back of the boat. No, I take that back. He threw it behind my seat because I was like driving crunched on the, you know, steering wheel like this. He's like, sorry, man, I know I took your room. Like, why don't you stuff this stuff behind your seat? You're like a foot shorter than I am, dude. You know, but whatever, it worked. So, I mean, that's the big thing, too. I mean, you know, it's funny when I fish with you, I fish with Jay. Like, I pull my boat out of the back of the truck. I pull my rods out of the front nose of my boat, and I put them in my rod holders. And I left my seat in place, and I'm like, all right, let's go. Meanwhile, you get, like you with your new canoe, you got to screw your seat on. You know, sometimes you put that front deck on, then you put your tackle in, get your rods out, whatever. Same thing with Jay. You know, he's putting his crate in there, putting his seat back up to normal height. He's got the rod holders that go in his rail system, so he just kind of drops those down and lays them flat during transport, and then he's got to unscrew them and then straighten them up. You know, so it's funny, like, you know, everybody's like, man, you got your system down, and I'm like, no, it's just kind of like the system of the boat. You know, the way that Bonafide's designed. It's super easy, you know. You know, so I mean, you know, it all depends, but that's the thing. Everybody gets a system. And that's like how Jay is with his Kusa, because he trailers that boat. It's just pedal drive. And, you know, he gets everything set up. He launches his boat off the trailer, and then he comes back down, he jumps in his boat and goes. But he's still got some setup time. You know, you know, it's different for everybody, but I think if you can manage those little details and kind of get a system down, you know, not only tackle, but rods, you know, depth finders, things like that, you know, so.
Yeah, it's definitely kayak specific. Whether you're managing tackle, whether you're managing just getting on the water.
Well, I think that's where I was going. Whereas a big boat, you just drop that thing in the water and you go.
You know, it is what it is.
You don't have to worry about. You have a rod blocker, you know, in a boat, but all you're doing is opening that up, pulling out the rods, and you start fishing.
My brother-in-law's, man, that nitro. He opens that thing up. It's like a wine cellar. I mean, it's
that's like fishing with. That's the same way with fishing with Scott Purrs. I think he's got like 14 rods up in the front rod locker. You know, you know, all the trolling rods and stuff, and then he's usually got jigging rods. Ranger's got a thing on the side of the passenger side where you can put a bunch of rods, and there's a strap that comes out. I don't know if the nitro.
It does, like on the front deck.
Yeah.
Well, here's what was funny. So we went to Canada, and he's like, "Sorry, man, but I don't got any room for your rods in the rod storage." I was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah." So mine transported on the deck. Well, of course, there's like a 9-mile stone dirt road. So we get to the I can barely reel it. You know, it's like you're chunking through sand. You know.
Yeah, there's gravel in the ball bearings.
Yeah.
Well, I remember that's how my old man's Skeeter was. He had, on the deck, there was like straps, so you could put the rods flat on the deck and then run the strap over it for like running across the lake. And then when he was trailering, he'd throw in the actual rod locker. But,
and I mean, I'm exaggerating. Everything was fine.
Hey, we're only exaggerating when it comes to Uncle Todd and his fancy nitro boat, you know?
It's an awesome boat, man.
But,
so you went out on your home lake and slammed some bass just this week.
Well, I guess let's back that up a second, because we should talk about Newton.
Oh, that's right. We never finished
Newton. Well, it could go either way. But so Lake Newton, if you guys aren't familiar with, It's a hydraulic power plant cooling lake in southern Illinois. So the first time I actually fished this lake was the middle of February. It was like 40 degrees outside.
Sure.
And the lake is kind of in the shape of a V. And you have the warm water side and the cold water side. So warm water's discharge, cold water's intake. But normally a lot of guys fish that cold water side because that warm water side, the water temps can usually run anywhere between 80 and 90 degrees. So that's going to make fish act lethargic. But me and Jay went down. Jay had never fished it. He's heard many things. He ended up catching a few fish. I got skunked, and it was like, what am I doing wrong? But at the same time, I found out.
But you already listened to our last episode, so you were good.
Yeah. I was. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was frustrated, but I started thinking after we got off the water and we're in the camper and we're cooking dinner or whatever, and we're talking about it, and I'm like, I found out an hour before we left.
Yeah.
I saw my old man, and he was telling me that John Gillespie, he has a TV show called Woods and Waters. Just filmed the show down there like 2 weeks ago.
At Newton?
And it just aired. So there was a ton of boats down there.
Oh, I'm sure.
And off the V of the lake, there's all these like separate little fingers and coves and stuff that you can go back into, and that's usually where the fish are holding up. Well, the one cove, I mean, I saw 12 boats come out of there before we even got in there.
Right.
So, and because the temperatures were so cold, we waited to get on the water. And once we got on the water, there's people out there already. So you figure 10, 12 boats come out of this cove. Mm-hmm. There's at least 2 fishermen per boat.
Yep.
Times that 12 times 2, that's 24. So that's 24 different lures minimum those fish saw before we even got to them.
Sure.
So it's high pressure,
Sure.
So, but the thing about this lake is because it's so warm year-round, those fish are growing year-round.
Right.
And they're saying the next Illinois state record can come out of there.
Sure.
And I know just on Instagram, I think it was last week, I posted a throwback Thursday picture, and that fish was from Lake Newton.
It was. I didn't know that.
It was a 5-pound bass.
Okay.
I mean, I had long hair, looked all fruity. And,
you were mullet.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I used to rock the skater mullet, that's for sure. But, my old man had taken me down there for my birthday. My birthday's in February, and he had seen it, the same thing. I think it was Gillespie or Denny Brower owns a lodge down there right off the lake. Mm-hmm. And he had seen it on TV, and he's like, hey, we should go do this for your birthday. He doesn't work in the winters. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not, And we slammed some fish, and big fish, healthy fish. We were catching them on Jig and a Pig. When I say Jig and a Pig, a football jig with a Uncle Josh's pork trailer on the back. And I tried that tactic when I was down there. I tried numerous things. And that was funny, is Jay caught 2 fish. One was on a 12-inch worm with a shaky head, jig head.
Right.
And the other one was on a white spinnerbait. So there's no pattern there.
No, right.
Right. I think it was just,
finding the fish.
Finding fish, and they were biting, but it was a struggle, man. So then, we were talking that night, and I'm like, the campsite isn't on Newton. Mm-hmm. It's actually in another state park 20 minutes away.
Got it.
Sam Parr Fish and Wildlife Area, which is funny because that lake is in the shape of a V as well, and it's got all these little fingers and stuff.
Sure.
So, me and Jay looked up that lake, and we're talking. We're like, maybe we should just fish this tomorrow morning. It's supposed to be raining. It's going to be cold. Like, why drive the 20 minutes away? We can drive 2 minutes to the launch, fish another different body of water. It's supposed to hold some decent bass, so let's give it a shot. And we actually got into some fish. We were catching them on chartreuse and white chatterbaits, and I think the biggest fish was like 17 inches or something. But we caught a slew of fish between 14 and 17 inches.
Okay.
I think we had 2 or 3 that were over 16. But they were hunkered to tree structure that was in the water, similar to what it was on Evergreen Lake. And throwing those chatterbaits, man, and they were coming right off the bottom of the logs and coming up and just smacking
Hammer
them.
him. Yep.
But there was also, it was weird. Half the bites were like super aggressive. The other half, those fish were just coming up and like just mouthing it.
Right.
And you just see it'd be more you not feel the chatterbait blade vibrating anymore. It just goes solid.
Yeah.
And you'd have to set the hook right away.
Just to
otherwise
see.
you weren't going to get
No,
it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I mean, I set the hook on, grass, just because I felt
You
that
felt it
blade
stop.
stop. But, if not, you weren't going to get those fish.
Sure.
So it was kind of funny, but some healthy fish for sure. It was definitely a cool lake, and it was funny. We ran into one other boat on the lake the whole morning. There was nobody out there. Nobody in the parking lot, nothing. So everybody goes to Newton. So this lake, didn't really get pressured much. So we were fishing all over. And we probably only fished maybe a quarter of that lake. We were up in the one part of the V, and we went to the furthest north we could go. And then we floated back down. We almost got to the bottom of the V, but there was a bunch of coves we didn't go into.
Sure.
There was a real nice rock wall where the dam is there.
Yeah.
That we wanted to fish, but we ran out of time.
Sure.
So that was pretty unique. But
and you guys fished the cold water side, not the warm water.
We did.
Talk about your theory
we
there.
did. Yeah. So we talked about this, me and you. We fished the cold water side, and 9/10 out of the time. 9 out of 10 times, people are fishing that cold water side. That's usually holding more active fish.
Sure.
The hot water side does hold fish, don't get me wrong, but the more active ones are going to be in that supreme water temp that they like. But what was funny is, I said that we saw 10 or 12 boats come out of that one finger before we got into it. All those boats, except for like 2, ran over to the warm water side.
Right.
So, and you could hear boats running over there, because there's just a strip of land separating the two.
Sure, yep.
So you could hear those guys running over there, and, that was a conversation that came up between me and Jay that night was, maybe we should go try the warm water side. But then it was like, I think what was going on is there was a tournament that weekend, not 100% sure, so that could have been another reason for all the boats and stuff in there. But, who knows? I mean, we could have gone and tried, but...
Well, and then later that same week, you went fishing on your home lake, and you got a bunch of bass.
Yeah. Well, it started out with, you came out one evening after work.
It was a Monday, I think.
Monday or Tuesday.
Something like that, yeah.
We came out and we fished for a couple hours. And it was kind of slow, but we caught some fish.
Right out of the gate, I landed a northern. I think you had a couple bass.
Yeah, you had a northern. I was tossing, the crayfish. And I missed like 4 or 5
You were
fish.
saying you couldn't hook them up.
They kept running at the boat, or I was late on the hook set, something. And then I changed up, and I got a couple bass.
Yep.
And then I went out again because it was like, I better take advantage of this
Sure.
warmer weather. I mean, it wasn't super warm, but I was able to fish in a t-shirt. And then more recently, it's cooled down, and I've been like bundling up and freezing my tush off, you know. But it's funny, in that week time period, those fish have like changed so much, and they've bulked up a ton. You can tell.
Well, the pictures you sent of those bass, I mean, they were like super chunky.
Oh, super chunky. There was one bass, I thought for sure it was, 4 pounds and, 20 inches, and I get it in the boat and it's 15 and it's just bloated, So it just goes to show you, like, that fall bite, it's like a light switch, and then they just start feeding and feeding. I think I did catch some fish on the crayfish when we were out.
And then you caught them on the spinner, I believe.
Was it a spinner or a buzz?
It was a buzz.
It was a buzz, yeah, you're right, because we were going back towards the launch, and I banged 3 right there by the launch.
So on the way back to the launch, I think we were kind of communicating once we got close enough. And I was telling you, I was seeing all kinds of topwater activity.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that was I had another northern on the chatter. I didn't get him in the boat, but got him up to the side of the boat. And then the weird thing was, as I was paddling, getting back to the slip, there were bass hitting stuff on the topwater right next to the kayak.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
Where like it's not like a bluegill, like you scare him and he goes away. Like,
Right.
Big swirl right next to the boat, and then you see a V just take off. And you're like, no way.
Right.
It was super cool.
Well, that's funny because a couple days later, I went out and we were talking about it. I was like, dude, the pike are on fire.
Right.
And I was throwing that white and chartreuse chatterbait I was throwing down at Sam Parr. And I probably hooked into 8 or 9 pike. And I think I got 1 or 2 in the boat. The rest all came off at the side of the boat because I didn't have my net.
Yeah.
But they were just hammering it. And I lost one on a number 4 Black Fury Meps as well.
Okay.
And dummy me, I wasn't thinking I didn't have a leader on, and I tied that onto a rod that had 8-pound test.
Right.
So
it was fluoro, right?
Yeah. And no, it was braid.
Oh, it was braid.
It was 8-pound braid.
Oh, okay.
But I got the fish in the boat. He flopped, the line cut on his tooth, and
he
went over the side of the boat with my number 4 Meps. Going back to tackle storage, I took my Mep spinner box out because I had one in the boat. So
you didn't have another one?
No. So I'm like casting, trying to hook this guy again. I'm like, this is going to happen. I caught 3 other ones in the meantime.
Right.
But and then more recently, it seems like all these fish have just pushed up against shore in the evening after that water's warmed up, and I've been tossing a black spinner bait.
Yeah.
And it's actually, if you guys follow along on our YouTube channel, it's the spinner bait I found when I was up in Hayward, Wisconsin.
On that rock.
Hooked on a log. And I tied that thing on and banged a couple fish up there in Hayward with it. So I had pulled that out, and I've been fishing that. It's a black booyah spinner bait with a big silver Colorado blue.
Yep.
And I've been just tossing that parallel to the shore and working it real slow, and they're just hammering it, man. Hammering it.
Yeah.
But I've also gotten them on the drop shot. So, I know we talked about briefly, it was probably like episode 2 or 3, about
new techniques.
Picking some new techniques to try out and perfecting for the year.
Yep.
And then adding that to our arsenal of tactics and building off that. And then, next year we're going to pick some new ones and do those. And then we got them in the storage box of, tactics to use. So I started drop shotting, and I even on their Instagram pulled some clips off the GoPros of me drop shotting and just, yanking up on some nice bass.
Well, and one of them was that rod is totally bent over. It's an ultralight, right?
Yeah, it's an ultralight. A lot of times you hear drop shot and you want to go with a super light line, like a 6-pound test, and I had 6-pound fluoro on that rod.
Right.
But the nice thing about that ultralight is you can feel just the slightest nip from a fish on that line. So, I'd feel this 2 tap, I'd let it sit a second, and then just yank up, and then they were just pulling drag. So that was a gas.
What's funny you mentioned about the ultralights. When I was in Canada a few years ago fishing for walleyes, I had a medium light rod, and my father-in-law had a bunch of ultralights, and literally I couldn't catch a fish to save my soul. And all of a sudden, he gave me an ultralight, and I was able to do it.
You were slamming fish.
Just because of the
sensitivity, for sure. Yeah, that was a gas, man, because, I was casting out a little bit and then just kind of working that bait back.
Yeah.
But most of my hits and hookups came where I was almost like just vertical jigging that thing.
Right.
Just sitting there and just shaking the head so that worm was just kind of flapping in the water. And they were just smacking that bait and setting the hook on that, and then fighting them on an ultralight. We're talking 16, 17-inch fish. I would have liked it to be a 20, but
sure.
16 or 17-inch largemouth bass on an ultralight rod is just a gas.
Oh, for
you know,
that.
like you can't beat that. You know, that's like going for a sleigh ride, as Steve McGee would call it, you know, on a catfish. But yeah, it was you know, the home lake's been heating up, and I'm in the process of editing a video. I worked on it a lot this morning, and you know, again, I'm having computer issues as normal, so working that out. But that'll be up. You know I talk a lot about the home lake, and you know, you've been out there numerous times this year, so I'm trying to put together the footage from like the past 2 weeks.
And that has that northern blow up on top water too, doesn't it?
Oh yeah,
That's a great.
Oh yeah.
Where do you guys see that?
Yeah, and I did the editing on that's pretty cool because it kind of zooms in as
Don't
that
give it
buzz
away,
bait
man.
is coming across.
Don't give it away.
Yeah.
The world premiere hasn't gone out yet.
I mean, stay tuned to the next YouTube episode. So. But yeah, no, it's definitely cool.
Well, we talk about new tactics. You definitely did a lot more drop shotting than I've ever done, and you had a lot of look at it this year. The other one was Ned rig.
Ned rig, yeah. You know, I wanted to focus mostly on finesse fishing this year. You know, I've always been a power fisherman. You know, I'm always good with a Senko, but I've never like really given the drop shot a chance. And then the Ned rig is kind of newer, but the Ned rig has worked out awesome for me as of recently.
Now,
like that saved me a couple trips.
Yeah.
Like Evergreen. If I wouldn't have figured out that TRD hogs, man,
right.
I'd you know.
Were you working the weeds there though? Because that's usually like my discrepancy with the Ned rig. Is if I got a rock bottom, I love it.
Yeah.
If I got any ounce of weeds, like it's the most painful thing to work.
So I think I was telling you at Evergreen, I was ripping that thing through the weeds. I would jig it, you know, because it's sandy gravel bottom mostly.
And you were using the Creature?
And yeah, well, I was using the Ned rig actual hook,
right?
The light
but
one.
The TRD hogs.
But I had the TRD hogs on it,
and it almost like a crayfish kind of. Right?
Yeah, it looks similar to a crayfish. It's like a small creature bait almost. But I'd bounce that, and then when I got to the weed edge, I'd just rip it through the weeds.
Right.
And then when it came shooting out of those weeds, I'd let it drop. That's when the fish were.
You know what's funny is I went on a guided trip on Big Green a few years ago.
Sure.
With a professional guy that fished the Bassmasters and stuff. And,
yeah.
His name is Greg Hout.
Okay.
And one of the techniques he used is he'd do the football jigging.
Yeah.
And he said the same thing. He's like, when you get in the weeds, he goes, you got to rip that out, like they're breaking loose out of those weeds.
Sure.
He goes, and then when they drop, that's when those things hammer. He goes, always when you're coming out of the weeds. And he was like hardcore with that approach. And we caught a few fish, but it sounds similar.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To what you were doing.
Yeah. No, for sure. But even still, like just bouncing that off of rocks.
Right.
Huge game changer.
We're up in this smallmouth excursion in Canada, and I'm driving the boat, right? So I don't have many options for like throwing because my father-in-law's in the front of the boat or whatever. So I'm like just dropping a Ned rig over the back,
Yeah.
And I'm bouncing it off the rocks, and I'm literally it was every cast, every time I dropped it down, like I would pull up a fish. It was non-stop. And I'm finally getting fish, right? Because I'm driving the boat, I'm doing all this stuff. And my father-in-law, who's like the captain of walleye jigging, goes, come on, we got to move. I got to start throwing or whatever. I'm like, throwing? I'm finally getting into the fish, And, but bouncing off those rocks, man, those smallies, they just couldn't resist it.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, I think it was a conversation we had with Jay, and he's like, anytime there's rocks, man, I'm pulling out that Ned rig. And I think that was from him fishing the Kishwaukee River.
They caught 30 or something that day.
Yeah.
Him and his buddy. And I asked him, I said, so you got them all on net? I'm like, where were you using it? And he goes, anywhere there was rock bottom, that's where we used it.
Yeah.
Just banging off the rocks.
And I'll attest to that, man. I mean, pretty much anywhere where I've got fish, with the exception of Evergreen. I mean, it was a gravel bottom, but I was plugging that thing through the weeds. And yeah, sometimes you'd hook up on some grass and you'd have to, that cast was dead.
Right.
Cleaning it off and then just shooting it through there.
So have you used the weedless Ned rigs? I
No,
have.
I have not.
And it's pointless.
Well, I have some of their small
In my
jigs,
opinion,
that are kind of like, just your regular bass jig. And I fished one of those, I think it was at Newton. And, yeah, it's supposed to be weedless.
No.
Yeah, it's not very weedless.
Well, we looked at the VMC
Yeah.
jigs today.
Yeah.
And what was interesting about their weedless approach, instead of having one heavier
Yeah.
piece of wire,
They had a few.
it had
in
two
a
on V,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of unique.
Yeah,
I'm
sure,
curious.
sure.
I might try those next year
Yeah.
just to see if that makes a difference.
Yeah.
But I like your approach on ripping it out of the weeds and letting it fall.
It's a good thing they carry those at Fleet Farm, right up the road from the new world headquarters of Tackl'N.
International.
Yeah, international. I'm sorry.
Remember, we have one fan in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, he's actually watching.
No way!
Yeah, I saw him
That's
jump
awesome.
on. So
Awesome.
yeah, but yeah, we're going worldwide.
So I guess let's talk about some new product stuff that we've seen. We mentioned that V.
The V crate.
The
Yeah,
V
yeah.
crate,
Mhm.
right? This is kind of over the top, the opposite way. We talked about the ProNav today. Do you want me to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, touch on it because I mean, I'm the same way. I'm looking at a new depth finder for next season for sure. My Lowrance is a little outdated, and I'd like to get a little bit bigger screen and get side imaging for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, it might be overkill, but for my plans next year, I think it's almost a necessity. But yeah, why don't you start off with that, the ProNav?
So, if you follow Joe Herrick,
Yeah.
or you follow any of the New Canoe guys, or you go to the New Canoe website, one of the things they tout is not only a stern motor mount, right?
Yep.
But also a bow.
Sure.
So they have an installer plate for the bow as well, which is really like those, just like in a regular boat, that sort of slide off, sort of trolling motor, right? That kind of works off the front of the boat. What's interesting about it though is a company called ProNav. They have an app for the iPhone and for the iPad and what have you. And basically what you do is you buy one of the compatible bow mount motors.
Sure.
And then this thing basically integrates it, so you've got spot lock, you've got the ability to do like trolling contours,
Yeah.
right? So set it to like, I just want to troll the 13-foot contour
Oh,
of the
yeah,
shoreline.
for
and
sure.
It basically, you set it and forget it. It's got a little remote control. For anyone out there that wants to check it out, it's called I think it's pronav.com, I think is where you find it. But it's unbelievable. I mean, like when I'm thinking about fishing Delavan here, there's some deep spots in the middle of the lake,
Sure.
which I wouldn't be able to put an anchor down anyway.
No,
So if there was
no.
even a slight breeze, I'm going to be off the spot in 2 seconds.
Well, not only that, but just boat traffic in general.
Well, sure,
Knocking
sure.
you around, what I
Sure,
mean?
sure. But I mean, like during the week when there's no one on the water, and I want to go out and maybe fish some of those holes for crappie or
Sure,
bluegill or whatever.
sure.
Spot lock would be pretty essential, So
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of my motors and my gears are already turning. As far as something like this, it's not cheap. I think it's $650 for the unit, and then of course you got to buy your bow trolling motor plus the mounts.
Sure.
So it's not going to be cheap, but I'm seeing some of these guys use these, and it's pretty impressive stuff.
Well, I mean, I think that, that gets into the subject that we talked about a little bit last episode, it's like, there's so many new technologies coming out for kayaks that almost make it like you have that big bass boat, but
Without
you
a
don't,
doubt. Right. Right.
but it's cool, man. I mean, I'll tell you what, if the KBF, KBL, all these kayak fishing leagues allow the electronic motors,
Right.
it's going to be a whole new ball game,
Right.
a whole new fishing game.
Sure.
Because if you can, like I'm talking about getting a new depth finder with side scan, for finding structure,
Sure.
especially in big open bodies of water.
Sure.
And say you find that structure and it's out in the center of the lake, and you can go out there and just hit spot lock.
Right. You're there.
And you don't have to
Sure.
worry about pedaling or paddling
Mhm.
and keeping on that spot or
Yeah.
trying to anchor in a heavy wind.
Yep.
You're going to slam the fish, and you're the guy that's going home with a check over
Right.
the next guy.
Right.
So it all depends. I mean, if you can set that up and utilize that in a tournament scenario, I'm just thinking like that's the way to go.
Right.
I mean, you know me, I'm a paddling snob. I love paddling, but when it comes to tournament fishing, and even like you said, just going out here on a big body of water, and being able to utilize that spot lock, or even if you wanted to troll. I think we were talking earlier, drop shot, putting that thing on slow and following a contour line. Once you find that depth that those fish are in, dude, it's lights out, game over.
Well, it's like we were fishing on the river. I mean, that smallie, one of the smallies I caught was literally, I was trolling with the trolling motor.
Yeah.
I mean, the 6 foot of water, but I mean,
Still.
you can feel that crank bouncing off the bottom,
Yeah, and that's perfect. I mean, in that kind of setting, you want that crank just digging that bottom. And I learned that from Scott Purrs fishing the Mississippi River up in Red Wing, Minnesota.
Sure.
He's like, you keep letting line out till you feel that crankbait just ticking the bottom.
Sure.
And that would just drive fish crazy. And next thing you know, we're landing walleyes hand over fist.
Well, I just took you on a tour earlier, kind of where we're at here,
Sure.
condo, kind of the different parts of the lake. And what's interesting, and you've been here before, but what's interesting is, I think having something like that would open up the deeper aspects of the lake. Whereas if you didn't have that, you maybe could find some spots with the depth finder, but staying on them would be tough.
Oh, it'd be super tough.
You know what I mean? So it would kind of open up that style of fishing, I guess, is what it is.
It would open up a whole new door of fishing tactics that you could utilize out in those deeper holes.
Right, which I would never fish if I just had a paddle in my hand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Totally get it. I mean, I'm the same way. Bonafide's got that pre-drilled mounting system in the back of theirs for either a trolling motor or the power pole. Yeah. And I've seen Jay use his power pole, and I've been like seriously considering it
sweet.
Because if you could have some kind of anchor point like that, like that's huge.
Oh yeah,
huge.
Without a doubt.
While I'm messing around trying to paddle myself back into place, he's just sitting there casting away, smiling. Hey, what's up, buddy? You just getting blown around in the wind? Yeah. But, I mean, and that's the thing, man. Like we keep talking about, it's so cool to see like all the big boat stuff get transferred over into the kayak fishing world. I think how much the kayak fishing world is going to take to certain things is still up in the air.
Sure.
But like with everything, give it time, and everybody's going to be on the bandwagon for sure. So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not committed yet, but it's got my gears turning.
Well, that's like we were talking depth finders when we had Steve McGee on, and he was talking about that Garmin unit, and it's like $1,500 for the live scan or something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not dumping that kind of money.
Well, me and him have the same depth finder. We both have that Raymarine Dragonfly 5.
And you both have issues.
And we both have the exact same issue with it. Where it just goes dark, and then all of a sudden, at some point later, it picks up again.
Yeah.
And then apparently it's a design.
Yeah, I mean, my Lowrance is... It still works. Once in a while, for some reason, my screen like just dims, and then I just have to go back and readjust the brightness on it.
So, is there a separate transducer for the side, or is it all built into the same?
No, side imaging is So basically, like down imaging or down scan, side imaging, like those are different transducers typically.
But they're in the same physical package, right? So you don't have to have like a separate transducer, or do you?
No. So like the transducer that's on my Lowrance now, it does have down scan.
Right.
But for side scan, that transducer, instead of being compact and like 3 inches by 1.5 inches, that's what I was looking at when we were at Fleet Farm. It's more of a flat square, and it's a lot bigger.
But the one flat square does everything.
Yeah.
That's
Because if you look at it from the side, it kind of like angles down in the center, or angles up going out to the sides. so it can kind of get that view.
Which leads me to my next, I guess where I was going with this was, what challenges does that bring to where you mount it? Meaning, can you mount it through the hull, or does that have to hang below the boat, I would assume?
I think it depends on your boat.
Okay.
I think I'll be fine mounting it on my black pack.
Okay.
I'll be
So
interested
just
to see.
on the radial arm?
Yeah,
As long as
just
that
an
arm
arm
sits
that-
below
yeah,
your boat?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I think as long as that, as long as the transducer gets below the hull of the
Yeah.
boat, I'll be fine.
Okay.
You know, if not, my other thought was to try rigging it up somewhere underneath the black box.
Gotcha.
So
Very cool. I think we just lost our live feed, but that's all right.
that's all right. We went long enough, I think, on that.
Does it say how long we went? Because I don't even know where we're at. to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we're getting close to the end here. So I guess the last thing to really talk about, or we were going to talk about, was the search for a new kayak is still
Oh yeah,
underway.
there's always a search for a new kayak going on. Yeah, I mean, you got the place up here, so you've been like going back and
Yeah.
forth on some different options and such.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But we started looking at more pedal kayaks, and I think from my perspective, right now I'm really interested in the Old Town Predator.
Sure. Sure.
That seems to be leading the charge there. The other thing is, I'm still waiting for New Canoe to come out with this pivot drive.
Sure.
That was supposed to be out by October.
Yeah.
It's still not out yet, which
Right.
is no surprise.
New canoe. Yeah.
Well, and there's the new Bonafides. I know you
Oh,
talked a little bit about getting
Ooh.
one for your daughter.
You get me excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. In your situation, I know we talked about it, but you know, my opinion is you know, leave your new canoe up here,
Right.
trolling motor, big
Right.
body of water,
Right.
be perfect, and then get something smaller
For home.
back
Yeah.
at actual home, you know, for just car towing around, you know,
Sure.
or roof racking around.
Right.
You know, but you know, that can go both ways, you know.
Yeah, I go back
it's
and
a hard
forth.
decision. If I
It
was
is.
in your position, I don't know what I'd do.
Sure.
I'd probably end up with 6 different boats, you know, and then you know, a mound of debt because I bought 6 different boats. But yeah, I definitely have been looking at a pedal drive as well because I want to fish tournaments next season, and I think that's going to be a key feature I'm going to need to utilize. So I'm actually looking at the new Big Rig pedal drive, which Jay was supposed to be on this episode talking about, but unfortunately he had some issues. But he had nothing but great things to say about that thing.
Yeah.
And from our conversation, he said that boat's definitely going to give Hobie the
run for the
pro
money.
angler the run
Yeah.
for the money for sure.
What I really like about Jackson's pedal drive system is you don't have to think about it. Like
Yeah, that dagger
all the other
board.
ones you lock in, and they're locked in until you pull them out.
Sure.
And what I like about Jackson is it's meant to break away. If you
Yeah.
hit shallow or you hit something,
Yeah, that dagger board pushes up into
It
the bottom of
does.
the boat and brings a prop up.
That's
and
pretty sweet.
Keeps it safe.
super sweet.
Absolutely.
But get this, so the plot thickens with the pedal drives too, because that Blue Sky Boatworks,
Yeah.
it's $3,400.
Yeah.
So think about that. The big rig's going to be like $3,400.
32 is what
Do you know what I'm
Jay's
saying?
guessing.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
though?
yeah.
Like that's not that far off.
No.
Like they're pretty close.
Right. Yeah. The big difference with that is you're going to be sitting a lot higher out of the water.
Yeah.
So you're going to be more like a sail.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
So, but stability wise, dude, you could throw a disco party on that thing with 5 people.
Well, and it comes with the Boondocks.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like an open platform. Like,
Yeah, actually, Jay posted a video of that. It was Drew Gregory
Yeah.
dragging the Blue Sky with the boondocks down.
Really?
I think it's on his Instagram. If not, it's on his Facebook. Actually, I take that back. It's on both
Okay.
because he links both
Sure.
of his pages
Sure.
together for his postings. But it was pretty slick. Drew comes by and he's just like smiling. "What's up, Jay?" and he's like dragging that thing like it's no big deal. So it was actually pretty cool. So I don't know. I mean, my old man was like all excited about that boat, but he's like, I don't know if I want to spend that on a kayak, this and that. But now he's looking at big boats and things like that.
Is he really?
Yeah, he changes his mind like he changes his underwear. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely I'm interested to see that big rig in action and actually get in and demo it.
It looks super sweet.
It does.
Super
it does.
sweet.
And it's got some of the same features that Hobie PA14 has. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't really have any backups as far as pedal kayaks goes that I'm interested in. But I'm definitely interested in. I'm going back and forth. Like, Bonafide just came out with the 11.7.
Right.
Which is pretty sharp. It's like a more.
But it's not a pedal kayak, though.
It's not a pedal kayak. It's a paddle. Thinking about getting it for my daughter and also a backup for myself. I don't want to say like a dumbed down version of the SS127, but it is
smaller version.
It's a smaller version. They changed up a few. Things on it, like the front hatch isn't a hatch; it's just a plastic indentation in the hull, and then it's got a cover that goes over. But it's still got the paddle holder in the actual cover. The back is pretty much the same. Seat's a little different. It's still got the center dry box rack. Things like that. My daughter likes the new color, so that's one thing. I kind of have like a girlish boat. But they're also coming out with that sit-in kayak that they claim you can stand and fish out of, which is smaller, but I've also thought about getting a smaller boat, sit-in like that, for river fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could take that down a river and then, get to some calm water and stand out of that thing, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I don't know, man. I'm all over the board. You guys know me.
I am too.
I'm a huge Bonafide nut, So someday maybe they'll come knocking on my door and want me to be the, fishing team or something.
Well, that wraps up another one, Matt.
Yeah, campfire stories.
Oh man.
Yeah. I think we should throw Jay under the bus this time around.
Why don't you go ahead and throw Jay under the bus and we'll wrap it up.
So Jay was supposed to be on this podcast, and Jay took his nice, beautiful son out to dinner the other night and was chomping on a cheeseburger at a McDonald's or a Burger King, and ended up getting a piece of something in his burger patty and cracked his tooth. Had to have a full tooth extraction. So he can't really talk very much at this current point in time, so we hope Jay's doing better.
That's why he wasn't on the pod.
That's why he wasn't on the pod. He texted us both and was like talking gibberish because he was on some kind of painkiller and said he had never been better after he got a tooth pulled out of his face.
I sent him a text after you told me it happened, and I said, "Hey Jay, sorry to hear about your tooth." And he goes, "Yeah, it's awesome."
Yeah. It's probably, I forget what they gave him. He told me it was like hydrocodone or something. And it was something powerful, more powerful than hydrocodone. And I'm sure he was on cloud nine. Like, I'm awesome. But so we hope Jay's doing better, and he's going to get back on. And we had started recording his podcast, but we were having connection issues, so we had tried to reschedule, but then he cracked his tooth.
So now everyone gets us.
Yeah.
Just us two.
Yeah. So, but Jay will be back on. He's going to talk about he just got back from the Jackson Kayak Summit, so he saw all these new Jackson boats. He's in the new Liska, so he definitely wants to talk about that.
Well, plus we got a local kayak shop that's going to be on the show as well, talking about a variety of different kayaks.
Yep. He's got a skinny on some newer kayaks coming out. He's a super cool guy. I've become friends with him. He's a kayak maniac. So
that's awesome.
We'll talk to him.
Yep.
him coming up this week. So
Sounds good.
yeah, sorry we left you guys hanging for a little bit there. We were on like a every week streak, and then we kind of hit a
Stuff
lull
falls through,
because
yeah.
well, connection issues,
Well, plus the world headquarters.
health issues. I had health issues too, but we won't go there.
No, yeah, we probably won't.
But and then you had to close on the world headquarters. So yeah, it was nice to get our first pod in up here. So,
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
So I look forward to many more up here.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We had the live stream up. Thanks all
Yeah.
those folks that joined the live stream.
Absolutely.
Maybe you could tell, kind of kick us off as far as where to find us.
Yeah. So everybody, you want to send us a question, comment, anything? Feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N, the word fin, @gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. Our Facebook page, same thing. Search paddle, the letter N, and fin, and along with Instagram, we're constantly posting new content, fishing pictures, fishing trips, doing live streams, things like that. So definitely check out our YouTube channel as well. It's paddle, the letter N, and fin. And if you guys want to leave us a live comment or question that we could play on a future podcast, log into the Anchor Podcast app. And actually, I think you can even send it without being logged in. I think you can send a message.
Okay, cool.
So you don't have to download the app, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe you can just go to our page.
Leave a
Again,
message.
just search Paddle and Fin,
Yeah.
and you can leave a message, and then we can replay it on a podcast and answer your question or say thanks for the nice comments, or you got something bad to say, we can say something bad back to you. We're just kidding. We love you guys. We'll catch you on the next pod. Thanks for tuning in, especially on the live stream. It seems like that went well. Maybe we'll try that on another one. So until next time, tight line, smooth paddling, and we'll catch you next time.
Next time it is.